Blockchain. We associate blockchain really and realistically with cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency uses blockchain as the pathway to do worldwide exchanges. Let's talk about what that means for us, though, in the supply chain. It's a secure, what we call a distributed ledger technology. In other words, everybody can have access to blockchain, literally everyone, if you choose to do so. And you can sit down and look at every single transaction. There's a code, but one thing it does is that once a transaction is completed, it is actually a technical transaction that takes place on a blockchain. And then after that, another one takes place, another one, and another one. That's why they call it a chain. You can't sit down and undo a transaction once it's verified and approved to be on the blockchain. And the approval doesn't come from one source, it comes from a whole series of different sources out there because the distributed aspect of it means many, many people have access to it, and it can't be undone. It is almost totally impossible to be undone unless you have to sit down and have a split in your blockchain. And that's a technical aspect that we have that is not part of our course here. But tampering with one instance is virtually impossible. Cryptography is the aspect that underlies every single aspect of it. And the agents that have the interaction happening, they guarantee that once the transaction's been made, the blockchain has an immutable record of it, and it's there and it's transparent for everyone to see. Now, the names of the people are not involved. There's a code that's involved with it, but the blockchain has an opportunity to be that single point of truth. This occurred on this date, and this is what that transaction was, and that's it. It is locked in, and then stuff is built on top of it as part of a continuation of the chain. Now, here's some of the aspect of blockchain. All members have a copy of the shared database. A block, once it's formed, once a transaction is formed, a block is shared with a group, yet it remains cryptographically private. Nobody knows who did it. They just know it happened, and here it is for this amount of whatever took place in that blockchain. Once it's confirmed by the members of the blockchain, all members add the block to their copies of the database. Soon as that happens, it is locked in stone, or rather locked in blockchain, okay, and it's immutable and can't be reversed. The complex math that ensures consensus among the database copy, it really prevents the aspect of tampering. Whenever it takes place, it's signed digitally through a public key cryptography. So in other words, all the provers on the blockchain, and there's thousands of them, once they sit down there and accept it, it becomes part of the blockchain, and that transaction can't be reversed. You have to be sure the sender has the asset that we've transferred, that it won't be traded twice. And we call that, really, by the time it's all that, there's a couple terms that we use in the process talking about blockchain, but really the aspect of you can't do the same transaction twice, which has really been a problem initially when we talked about blockchain. To prevent double spending, the blockchain commands several nodes to prove the transaction and have it processed. Therefore, you eliminate the opportunity for double spending, and it simply doesn't exist. There's no need to pay intermediaries. One reason that you're seeing pushback against blockchain and cryptocurrency is the fact that when something is done on blockchain, you don't need to have a lawyer look at it to make sure it's okay to sign. It's a matter of it's signed automatically. You don't need to have an accountant look at it to make sure it's okay. You're cutting out all the middle people, and it depends which document you read. For the most part, there is a guarantee that you can, if you everybody were using blockchain, you could reduce the cost of business, and the estimates range from 17 to 34%. Could you imagine reducing your overall business cost 34%? If you were using smart contracts, in other words, a contract not designed in writing, so to speak, but designed in cryptography, and made certain you didn't have any loopholes in the language of it or in the coding of it, you can sit down and reduce your overall cost of business by over 30%. Imagine how spectacular that would be. You wouldn't be paying lawyers, you wouldn't be paying auditors, you wouldn't be paying accountants, you would be paying the aspect of the programming, and it would be done. And on top of that, the speed of the transaction is incredible. Right now, I'm in California, and if I wanted to do a contract with somebody in India, I want you to think about the timeline it would take to have happen. I'd have to sit down, create a create the contract. I'd have to send it over to them. They'd have to look at it. You might have a language barrier. They have to sit down and have their attorney look at it to make sure it's okay. You have a dialogue going back and forth. You have to determine how you're going to pay for it. And is it going to be an automatic electronic transfer? What would the transaction be in the process? On a good day, if you had that transaction between California and India, you might have that contract all in place maybe in 2.5 or 3 weeks. If it was all done on a smart contract, it could be done in 40 minutes. That would be an international transaction where you have a massive matter, a scale of something going back and forth, and it's agreed upon and it's done. This condition, payment. This condition, payment. This condition, payment, and it happened that fast and that process. It cuts down a lot of time and it really helps open up communication in a large method. And then you don't have all the double talk and people trying to make money off of your transaction. It's just you and the vendor all up and down the entire supply chain. It's a big deal, and the potential here is phenomenal. Think about the idea of something simple as a real estate transaction. If you're buying a piece of property, all of a sudden, you don't need to have a real estate agent anywhere along unless you choose to have somebody look at the parameters of the contract. You just have a standard smart contract. This is what we have. Here's a transaction. Boom, you put it in place. 40 minutes later, the property is fully transferred if the conditions in the contract are met, and it's all done. Incredible how it does. You can save massive amounts of money, up to 30% typically, a lot of times. But here's the advantages: transparency, immutability. Once it's done, it's done. There's no intermediaries, which means a lot of money savings. Users are empowered. There's integrity in the process. Trust is built in because it's right there in the smart contract, and the steps are listed. And when this step is done, this amount of money is exchanged, and so on. It's right there in the contract, and it can't be reversed at all by some lawyer suing somebody else in court because it's a smart contract. There's enhanced security. It isn't blockchain. No hackers get into it. There's trustworthy transactions. You eliminate really the need for trust or developing trust, and it's a good safekeeping of data. It really is a matter of, since it's immutable and everybody can see it, it's sitting right out there. There's no secrets in blockchain. The only secret is who are the parties that are in there. The privacy makes it impossible to erase the data. It's standardized, it's out there. By the time you're all done, nobody knows who's involved in a transaction, but if anybody wants to view a specific transaction, you have a reference number, it's right there. The inefficiencies, it keeps multiple copies automatically because blockchains have a governing body control them, but everybody can sit down and see it, and the governance is out there in public for everybody to see it. So applications of it, a lot of it is cryptocurrency networks. You have a lot of business-to-business networks using it as well. You're seeing most of your major banks already have some type of internal blockchain mechanism for them, and they're tracking transactions and trying to figure a way to crack the code to get their chunk of the pie, because they don't want to be left out in the process of that 30%, which is how they've been sponging off, making money. Sponging and making money doesn't sound quite as bad. So that being said, the hybrid opportunities and the technology really isn't ready for widespread adoption because of concerns with the leading platform called Ethereum. Really, Ethereum is the basis of a lot of blockchain, and you'll see a lot of different cryptocurrencies running on Ethereum using the Ethereum blockchain. Peers need to validate each other, and every time a transaction's run, they run consensus at the same time. So by the time you're all done, you're looking at what we call a hyperledger, and Ethereum, it focuses on the purpose of really being a business to business instead of business to consumer. Now, it's really rare if you walked in to a pizza place and say, "Hey, I want to have a pizza. I'm going to pay for it in cryptocurrency." Now, just so you know, on Pizza Day, there's actually a Pizza Day that takes place at the end of May each year, where we celebrate the first transaction that ever took place on blockchain, and that transaction was the purchase of a pizza. I called the company that sold the pizza, and I says, "If I ordered a pizza right now, would you take cryptocurrency?" And the gal says, "Huh?" They had no idea, even though they were the first place on planet Earth to chain, and they took money for the first crypto purchase, even though that's out there. They had no idea what I was talking about. For the most part, All your blockchain transactions are only business to business. We have not yet bridged the business to consumer. That's going to happen in the next 5 years. From my perspective, I think it's a for sure thing. Blockchain is a distributed ledger. We call it a hyperledger, and it skirts the scalability issues of Ethereum for faster and easier ways to reach consensus. With that being said, it really is one of the better ways of dealing with it. The Hyperledger is confidential, private, and a permission network, while Ethereum is transparent and public-private. So you're looking at really, Ethereum is probably the most visible blockchain that's out there. So you're looking at a consensus mechanism, and then we call that the Byzantine general issue. And the Byzantine general means everybody is loyal because of the fact that the whole world is transparent. If you want to dive more into that, study cryptocurrency, or you can take the class on cryptocurrency that we teach here at Irvine Valley College. The Hyperledger Fabric is a blockchain framework intended to develop applications for a modular architecture, but especially when it comes down to a supply chain. If you have an entire supply chain built on blockchain, then all of a sudden now you have immutable transactions that nobody can dispute, and things can move much faster if we sit down and have the aspect of everybody plugged into the actual blockchain itself. That fabric in the supply chain, if it's built on the blockchain itself, really hosts smart contracts. We call that chain code, and that really is the core of the system as a whole. So that being said, the terms to use are distributed ledger, which is what the blockchain really is, and the transparency and the immutability in the process. You have to have permission that Stogtooth has. We talked about that. And it also gives you the privacy because of the fact no names are revealed. You have to have consensus in the entire process. And then you have the transaction flowing through the entire supply chain if it's built on a blockchain. So the key things, blockchain provides an open, distributed ledger. It's almost bulletproof records, and smart contracts are ideal, and they move the supply chain faster than we've ever experienced if it's done correctly. That means the coding has to be properly done with no flaws in it. If you have those kind of smart contracts, you can have ultra speed up and down the supply chain if it's implemented properly and everybody's responding to the contract in a timely fashion. It is the future, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit even further. Take care.